Hi there VC, Steve Whitty here, time for another video. As I intimated in my last video, which I published towards the end of last week, I was looking to do like smaller recent finds videos, sort of catch up a little bit, but rather do one great long video. I did just do little small videos where I'm showing 6 albums. I think that's more than enough for anyone to contend with. I hope everyone's well and have been enjoying their weekend. Thank you to those who commented on my t-shirt. Today's t-shirt is Long Player by The Faces. So yeah, again, I got that from DJ T's. I really should leave a link to them, but it's they're well worth checking out, and they're reasonably priced as well. So without further ado, let's show the first of the 6 albums I'm going to show you today, and it's Mick Ronson's Slaughter on 10th Avenue, his debut solo album from 1974. Now this sort of came out post Ziggy. He was signed to Ronson was signed to Main Man, same management company as Bowie at that time, and so I think they thought, well, we're going to put the efforts in to make him a star. As I said, this is a self-produced album. And it's an album mixture of styles. You've got a version of Love Me Tender on here, which opens the album. The title track's a great song, and you've got things like Growing Up on Fine and Only After Dark Music is lethal as well. The band consisted of himself, Trevor Bolder, Ainsley Dunbar and Mike Garson, which was most of the Bowie stuff. A lot of them would have appeared on pin-ups, I think. The album itself was generally well received. I think some critics were even putting it on par with some of the stuff that Bowie had put out. I like the album. I think it's a really good album. In order to try and promote him as a solo artist, his debut show was held at the Rainbow Theatre. And his band, he had the band, he had backing vocalists, he had a horn section, and for that night he had the London Symphony Orchestra as well. I think all this sat uncomfortably with Ronson. He was forever a sideman. He was never the star. I mean, he did produce other solo albums, but I think he was telling that as soon as the offer from Mott the Hoople came to join, he took it, and then that started a long partnership with Ian Hunter. He also was on the Rolling Thunder tour with Bob Dylan as well, and became really better known as the producer and that backing session. A star he it never sat comfortably with him. This is a good album. This is well worth checking out. I'm pleased I finally got a copy of that. Turn my notes over. Next album. This is Stiff Little Fingers. This is their second album, Nobody Hero. Said second album, their debut, the first album for Chrysalis Records. They've initially been with Rough Trade Records, giving that label their biggest hit with Inflammable Material. Second album sort of follows the same sort of structure. It's a bit more polished, I suppose. The tracks on here, Gotta Get Away, At the Edge, which was the hit single for him at the time, Nobody's Hero, Tin Shot Soldiers. These were all staples of their live act. It's really good album, very anthemic, in the best traditions of like British punk at that time. I said this was the first album for Chrysalis. On the back of the record, you'll get a letter from that Chrysalis sent when they originally sent a demo tape in, and they were turned down, wishing them all the best. And I think it was sort of like, I wouldn't say dig, but it was put on just to make a point. The album itself reached number 8 in the UK album charts, which was to provide their biggest selling album. And then At the Edge was their biggest selling single, which I think was in the top 20s in 1980. So yeah, I'm glad I got this. I do need to seek some more out. I do like that brand of punk, very anthemic sing-along stuff. Next album I'm going to show you, this is Temptations, and this is Psychedelic Shack. released in 1970. This is the band's 12th studio album, and this saw a big shift in style. All written by Norman Whitfield and Barrett Strong, and Norman Whitfield produced. As I said, this was moving away towards the traditional Motown sound, towards a more psychedelic sound at the time, hence probably why they put it in the title. It features the Funk Brothers as well, playing on here. But this would be the last album to feature Paul Williams and Eddie Kendrick. Williams was at this point suffering from sickle cell disease, and he was also battling alcoholism. This led him to be unable to perform at times, so they had to get a replacement in. The band persevered with him, but he would retire in 1971, and he was found dead in 1973 from apparent suicide. Eddie Kendrick, on the other hand, he was falling out with Otis Williams, really over the lack of creative control. Whitfield pretty much controlling the band at the time, and also the treatment by Motown. Motown was all about getting the hits. Though I was listening to a podcast where they said they would persevere with bands, but it was very much to the formula. And I think Kendrick wasn't a big fan of the direction that Whitfield was taking the band. He was a more traditionalist, and this, with the falling out with Williams, he would leave in 1971 himself. The album itself is absolutely, I think, a great album. It's not the best album that Temptations ever did, but it's that start of that period, early 70s period, where they just produced where Whitfield helped produce some great stuff. You got on the album here their version of War. Well, I'm not sure if that's the original. Psychedelic Shack, You Make Your Own Heaven Hell, Right Here on Earth. And this is the start of the period where they were experimenting with long tracks. With the traditional Motown sound, it was 2 minutes, 2.5 minutes, maybe 3 minutes at a push. Sort of like any track could be released as a single. And this was just taking it in a new direction. It was pushing Motown more modern. It could have been left behind. The album itself would reach number 9 in the US charts. And yeah, I'm pleased they've got this. It sort of like completes that period of Motown for me. Let's have a slurp of tea. That's better. Jam, dig the New Breed. This came out in 1982, and it's a compilation. It's a live compilation of performances recorded between 1977 and 1982. The band had, when it came out, had just split up. Paul Weller had split the band up. That's to be on it precise. This was big news. At this point, the Jam were the biggest act in the UK. Their singles were, on the whole, going in entering either number 1 or, if not number 1, top 5. They had even made the news. They had a piece on Nationwide, which was an old news magazine daily magazine program that was on in the UK around tea time. Weller had become fed up of the whole. I think he got fed up of being constrained with the confines of the Jam, the three piece. He wanted to go a different direction, hence why he formed the Style Council, which was a bit more fluid to his ideas at the time. Where I don't think he could have done that with the Jam. Obviously, it pissed the other two off because suddenly the income had gone. Apart from Foxton writing the odd song, they didn't have any income coming through. Weller could rely on the royalties. So it ended up, I think, later on in the 80s, ended up in a court case, which soured relationships even further. I know Weller and Foxton made up, but yeah, it is a bit of a shame. It's one of these bands that'll never get back together again, and I think all three members have made that public. I think it may have been if Paul Weller had been allowed to do a solo album and got it out of his system, maybe he could have taken the Jam further. You know, they were doing an album a year at the time, and I think Weller was under a lot of pressure. I think the band members saw that as well. and they probably saw it as the fact that he split the band up was being, as a result of the pressure, he couldn't take it any further. But as live albums go, it's not a bad live album. It's not a great live album, but it's a bad live album. It is what it is. It's a mishmash of recordings. Next up, you know I like my two first. This is two originals of Allman Brothers. Now, this came out in 1973, and it's the first two albums. The Allman Brothers Band, which came out in 1969, and Idlewild South, which came out in 1970. You can get this in various formats. I think there's one that's called Beginnings as well, which is the two albums, but you don't get the artwork. This is what attracted me to this version of it. On the Allman Brothers Band debut album, you've got Whipping Post on there, and then Idlewild South. You've got The Memory of Elizabeth Reed. Both songs you hear it live at the Fillmore. I was just keen to get some more Allman Brothers Band. I've got best of, but to get some of the albums as well. These two albums are notoriously difficult to find in the to find just because they didn't sell that many, and it's just when you do find them, they're expensive. This was an eBay purchase. This only set me back about 12 quid. So yeah, well worth having. And it's nice. I think I've said it before, and I'll say it again until I'm blue in the face. With Toofers, I think record companies are missing a trick here. Instead of just doing blooming out reissues with all the bits and bobs in it and charging something 40 quid, just put two albums together on 140 gram, and there you go. And you've got it then. But of course, that doesn't make money, so that's what they're all about in the end. Okay, the final album I'm going to show you today is the Faust tapes by Faust, of course. Released in 1973, this was their third album. This is an album you do see quite a lot of. You don't see much of Faust, but you see a lot of this. And the reason for this was Virgin Records, as a promotion, to push the album, released it. The sale price was the price of a 7-inch single at the time. Hence why it sold 60,000 copies. This would cost Virgin Records would lose a bit of money on this. I think they could play a little bit with this because they've obviously got Tubular Bells was selling, so they got a bit of spare cash. The album itself would be the only album that Faust would have chart, which was number 12. It's krautrock, in a sense, it's krautrock prog. It's not a bad album. It's not a great album. I can see why people are drawn to it. It's, maybe not totally my cup of tea, but I actually did enjoy listening to it. So it's there. If I see any Faust and it's at a reasonable price, I will go for it. Like all krautrock, I found. So there you go, VC. Those are my 6 albums I'm going to show you today. I'm glad that I hope that you liked what I've shown. So I'm going to leave it there. So wherever you get up to this Sunday, make sure you have a good one. Take care of yourselves. Keep spinning, but more importantly, keep on smiling.